All right, so here are our notes for the first part of section 1.4. And this one is going to be about multiplication of positive and negative numbers. And in some ways, this is easier than adding and subtracting, quite honestly. So let's look at a couple things here. So I know you all know the answer, but I'm going to remind you kind of how it works a little bit. 5 times 3. Well, remember, multiplication means repeated addition. So 5 times 3 is 5 plus 5 plus 5. Okay, and I think you all know that that is 15. Okay, what if it's negative 5 times 3? Well, that's negative 5 plus negative 5 plus negative 5. Well, we've got the same sign all the way across. We just add them up and keep the sign. And look at that, we get negative 15. Okay, I think that is pretty straightforward there. So what if we have, I'm going to switch the order here, negative 3 times 5. So that would be negative 3 added together 5 times. Let's see if I can write them all down here without making a mistake. Okay, so negative 3 and negative 3 is negative 6. Another negative 3 makes negative 9. Plus that one makes negative 12. And when we add the last negative 3, we get negative 15. Okay, so this one, right, what you've always done, 5 times 3 is 15. Here, if we have a negative 5 times a positive 3, we get negative 15. Likewise, a negative 3 times a positive 5 is negative 15. But what happens if we have negative 5 times negative 3? This is where it gets a little tricky. Okay, this is a little weird. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this like this. With this first negative, I'm going to put it out front. And I'm going to separate it, and I'm going to write this now as positive 5 times negative 3. I just pluck this negative off and put it over there. And the way I like to explain it is you can think of this negative. Negatives we can describe using a few different ways. And I'm going to make this one the opposite of. Okay, so this negative I'm going to think of as the opposite of. So what this is now saying is the opposite of 5 times negative 3. So this is the opposite of, when we do this, like we see here, negative 15. And what is the opposite of negative 15? Well, that is positive 15. Okay, so when we're doing these, I think you'll see the pattern here. Positive times a positive is a positive. A negative times a positive is a negative. Here we got a negative times a positive also is a negative. And a negative times a negative, this is the weird one, is a positive. So let me write that out here. So positive, I'm going to use parentheses to represent multiplication, times a positive is a positive. Positive times a negative is a negative. A negative times a positive is another negative. And a negative times a negative is a positive. So those are the rules. And the way I'm going to suggest to remember it is if you have the same signs when you're multiplying, your answer is positive. Oops. And if you have different signs, then the answer is negative. Okay, same signs, answer is positive. Different signs, the answer is negative. So just to look at a few here, and then we'll finish the rest of the notes for 1.4 in a different video. But let's just look at a couple. So we've got now 7 times negative 5. Okay? And so positive times a negative is a negative, and just multiply like normal. 7 times 5 is 35. So the answer is negative 35. Okay? Pardon me 1 second here. I want to focus one more time. And if we do negative 4, sometimes we will write multiplication like this with parentheses. Sometimes we'll use the dot, but what we won't do in this book is use the x, because we're going to do things with variables later, and it gets confusing to have an x as a variable in a problem and the multiplication sign as an x. It just looks a little weird and it's hard to figure out. So here, negative 4 times positive 6, negative times a positive is a negative, 4 times 6 is, 24. Okay, and some of these will have slightly bigger numbers, so negative 8 times negative 15, and I would like you to not use a calculator for these, so these you might have to work out a little bit. So 15 times 8, 8 times 5 is 40, 4 up here, 8 times 1 is 8 plus 4 is 12, so 120. Negative times a negative is a positive 120. Okay? And a few of the problems will be multiplying three numbers together. 4 times negative 8 times 5, say. All right, and I'm just going to suggest to go left to right straight across here. So 4 times negative 8, well, that's negative 32 times 5. And if you work out 32 times 5, you're going to have to trust me on this one, but you will get 160 for 32 times 5, and a negative times a positive makes your answer negative 160. Okay, so negative 2 times negative 6 times negative 3. Okay, again, we're just going to go left to right here. Negative 2 times negative 6. A negative times a negative is a positive, so that is 12. And then we're going to multiply to that negative 3. Now we have a positive times a negative. That means our answer is negative, and 12 times 3 is 36. So our answer is negative 36. Okay, so just a little shortcut here that might help if you have an even number of negative signs, of negative numbers, then your answer is positive. And if you have an odd number, like this last one here, okay, odd number, pardon my writing there, of negatives, then your answer is negative. Okay, put an S there, that's bugging me. Okay, even number of negatives, your answer is positive. Odd number of negatives, your answer is positive. Oh, I said that wrong. One more time. Even number of negatives, your answer is positive. Odd number of negatives, your answer is negative. Sorry about that. Okay, so again, this should get you through about the first half of the homework. And in addition to this, there will be a part 2 of the notes that you can check out for the rest of your homework. So again, I hope that's okay, and please let me know if it isn't and you need help.